Hello everyone, so good to see you. How's it going? This is the week, everyone. This is the week that Persona 3 Reload is going to release for all of us. And I just wanted to take a few moments to just talk about the game. Talk about Persona 3 in general. This isn't some huge deep dive, this isn't some huge analysis of Persona 3 Reload or anything of the sort. It's just going to be some guy talking about their experiences with Persona 3 and the series in general, because it's very important to me, actually. It's done a lot for me in my life, socially, emotionally, and it's just had a huge effect on how I perceive my relationships with people. And it changed my life, honestly. More so my social life. Growing up, I was very much an introverted person. I didn't really know how to speak to people very well at all. There's still some little hints of that even nowadays, I feel like, but I've gotten a lot better, I feel, given what I do now. But mostly in high school, middle school, a little bit in college, I was pretty much just the person that kind of stood by the side. I did my own thing. Nobody bothered me because I was just kind of that quiet kid. I guess I looked a little bit intimidating because no one really ever wanted to start a fight with me or pick on me or anything. But I did have my friends, my nerdy friend group, and they were the ones I socialized with the most. But even then, I didn't really participate in any like extracurricular activities. I didn't do clubs. A lot of my friends were doing drama and theater at the time. And that's something like, there's no way I could do something like that. I don't know how to act. I don't know how to do anything of the sort with other people. Yeah, I pretty much just involved myself with games all the time. It's funny because at the time, the most social thing I did was really talk to people online. I was the most comfortable just texting people, chatting with people that way. And there was nothing that I could relate to more than games. And the biggest one that was out at the time, I remember, was Super Smash Bros. Brawl. That's the era that we were in at the moment. The websites that I would visit for Smash Brothers were kind of hit or miss. Of course, there was like Smashboards. But there was one that I stuck to a lot, and maybe someone else on here remembers it. It's called, or was called, because it's no longer a service anymore, allisbrawl.com. I'll try to put a banner up here for what it used to look like, because I remember I worked on it a little bit as the years went on. I frequented that site so much that I became, I don't know, somewhat known there for my graphic design. It was a little forum. It was a really advanced website, actually. You can go on forums, you could chat with people, you can set up tournaments, have rankings. I met the person who made the website. His name was Neil, one time over in San Francisco, and super talented guy. Really knows how to make all that structure work. And one of the communities I was most involved with was the art community. So there was a group of people on there. If you've been on forums way back then, you know how it goes. You're on forum websites, and people would like to make little customized signature rectangles that were at the bottom of all your posts. And I was having a little shop back then, a free to order, made little graphic design shops. And I made a bunch of little form signatures. Maybe I have some here. I don't want to share them, really. But, I mean, it's fun to look at the old stuff I used to make back then for forums. If you happen to visit that site at the time and you know the name Night Tide, or even before that, probably the one that is more likely people would know, Firebomb. That was my username back then. I wasn't very creative. None of us were. That was just how our early usernames were back then. And so I had like this shop where I made a bunch of designs for people, and I was an art moderator for that website for a long time, for years and years, until that website finally just kind of shut down eventually. A friend of mine, I think, would often ask for Persona related banners. Maybe I have one here, who knows? Because they knew I was interested in RPGs. There was like a little section on the forum where we talked about other games that we liked. And Persona came up, and I was like, what is Persona? They were kind of introducing me to the concept of it, and I'd never played it before. Is it for a Nintendo console? I didn't know at the time. I only got a PS2 so that I could play games like Kingdom Hearts. And I'm really glad I did have a PS2, because that helped introduce me to a lot of games and genres that I never thought I would play, like Dragon Quest VIII, Metal Gear Solid 3, Guilty Gear Accent Core is what I started to play that with friends. That's how I got into the first Final Fantasy VII playthrough that I ever did, was through a friend's copy on the PS2. And that included Persona. So eventually, I did get the game. I got Persona 3 FES after recommendation, not the original Persona 3 on PS2. This pretty much has that whole game and more. And the box art is really not good. It's just like one colored over PNG of Aigis and a background that has no relevance. The inside is much better. The back is better than the box art. But I think this has some of the original box art here as well for the Japanese version. Even the back of this, all of this looks better, honestly. I don't know why they had to change it for the Western releases. So basically, I started the game off and I was like moderately interested in it. Persona had a really unique environment because it was so modern. It's in the modern day. It's kids going to school in a city and living in a dorm, and the mix of fighting shadows and putting the evokers to your head, and it had a really dynamic way of starting a conversation, because you talk about, you know, that one game where you put the evoker to your head and you blast your brains out and you summon a demon behind you. It's not a real gun. It's not an actual bullet-loaded gun. Don't worry. But it's the act of doing it that summons the persona, and that starts a conversation right away. They're trying to be cool and edgy and dynamic probably back at the time, but that stuck. That starting point was a point of discussion, and that's what kind of got me interested in talking about it too, because I'm just like, I don't play M-rated games. That's not the Daniel way. But I played it, and I don't think I really attached myself to it, because I remember about 10 hours in, I was like, I want to play something else, and I stepped away from it, and I played other games. I don't know, maybe I played like Tales of the Abyss or something on PS2 at the time, but I didn't really latch onto it very much. Even though I stepped away from it for a while, maybe like a month or so, I kept thinking about it for that month, and eventually I just decided to jump back on it and tell myself, okay, maybe just a little more. Maybe we just need a little more of a push to make sure that, you know, this might not be the kind of game that I'm into. And so I kept playing. I think the next full moon event happened not long after, and I got myself more invested, because those are the moments that really push the story forward. That's the problem with Persona 3, is that the full moon events once a month, you have to wait inside one in-game calendar month, day by day, to see these big events. And by the end of that month, that time from the beginning to end of each full moon, there's not much build up in the beginning, for sure. There's just a lot of gaps of nothing really happens except you do your social stuff, social links, working on your like academics or your courage, your charm, for example. It doesn't really make any kind of impact whatsoever on the main story, which is something that Reload is working to alleviate very much with things like social link episodes and all that stuff. You know, it's funny because like Persona is basically a perfect school year. You know, you're going to clubs, you're meeting friends, you're going out on dates, all the mundane stuff between fighting shadows, and I wasn't that person in real life, like, whatsoever. I wasn't the one that got out there and joined clubs or talked to people very often unless they were within my friend circle already. And it's just like, you know, you get to know so many people and so many things about these people within 1 year. Looking at it from that perspective, like from a very condensed perspective compared to an actual school year, it's like, man, I wish I had that kind of life. And through talking to people through social links, because you can have specific conversations between you and another character one-on-one, all the way through to a rank 1 event to a rank 10. And it's pretty much just this condensed little pocket of episodes in which you get to know someone very, very well. Obviously, these kind of relationships sometimes they take a lifetime to establish from the rank 1 to rank 10, but obviously within the context of a game, it makes sense to just have it like that. But that sort of thing helped me have more empathy with people. And I think it's just the way that the game is structured to have you answer these questions and consider these characters' feelings, to have empathy for someone who may be having a hard day, or to get excited with somebody, or to help somebody else that's struggling in something that they're, you know, having a problem with in real life. It could be something like cooking, or it could be something like feeling like you're not a good enough person for the group of people around you. Sometimes it hits very real spots every now and then. And you're given these choices of dialogue to answer, and you have to consider, what does this person want to hear? what do they need to hear? And sometimes they need to hear something, but it still lowers or it still has a negative effect on, you know, earning more points towards getting the next social link rank. You know, it's very much gamifies building relationships in a way that I've never seen before. But it still wants you to be very considerate and wants you to have empathy for somebody who might be having a bad time, or somebody who is genuinely someone you want to make your friend. And that kind of characterization is kind of fantastic for a game at this point, because this is, I play games of the other RPGs, but they're always kind of like caricatures of, you know, tropes and such. But these characters have a lot of layers to them. They have a lot more to them than just how you meet them. Your first impression says a lot, but as time goes on, it kind of changes and molds itself into something else entirely that, you know, maybe this person isn't so bad after all. Maybe they just, you know, they put on this front, never judge a book by its cover and all that, you know? And I wanted to try and have that in real life as well, to just kind of talk more with people, trying to get to know them more, have conversations. And I'm not the kind of person to have those kind of conversations with anybody, at least back then. Like, I could hardly do a phone call. I still can't really do phone calls now. They're scary. I want to be able to see someone and talk to them in person. Playing Persona kind of helped me alleviate that fear here and there. People aren't that scary, honestly. You just have to get to know them. And they don't know you either. There's a lot that people might want to know about you, believe it or not. I'm still learning that today. And it's not just your relationship with these characters, it's their whole relationship with each other. Your cast, your party, getting to know each other throughout the course of the story. Maybe it starts at one place at the beginning and it ends somewhere completely different for them, you know, because it takes a long time to build relationships with people. All Persona games cast are very close-knit. Persona 4 probably the most, because of the game's story, and I won't spoil what happens because there's probably people that still want to play the game. When you meet your characters, before they even become your party members, you essentially see the worst side of them, or at least what they project to be the worst side of themselves, amplified into a really freakish, grotesque thing that in their minds is something that they never want anyone to see. And your party, one by one, is introduced to these characters because of that. It's the fact that you see someone's worst side, or I guess what they consider to be the most worst part of themselves first. By you accepting that part, and also the character themselves accepting that, you already feel an immediate close bond to them. It's like, yeah, you've got your problems, but also I got my problems too. And that's okay, you know? We can both talk about our problems if that helps, or we can just, you know, be mindful that it's a sensitive topic. Most characters are mindful of that throughout the story, and they don't, you know, they don't push that very often. But it's something that's in the back of their mind that they know they're working on and that they're trying to work past. And that's fascinating, to tell a story in which you already know like the deepest, darkest, most uncomfortable and unsettling parts of their aspects of their personalities right away, and then building off of that going forward. It's part of what makes the cast so relatable, because we all have our insecurities. Everyone has something that they want to hide from somebody else, and we can't imagine seeing that part exposed to others in a way that, you know, I just want to hide in my closet and never come out again. I don't want to ever see people react to this ever again. But they accept it and they move forward. And I think that's part of what makes Persona 4's cast so humble and cozy, is that they really understand each other from the onset. We all have something that's uncomfortable that we don't want to expose to other people, but, you know, Persona 4 tells you and reaffirms to you that, you know what, there's a lot of complicated feelings and aspects and emotions that come with this sort of thing, but at the end of the day, if it's something that you can work yourself through and become a better person out of it, I think that's the message that they're trying to send, is that your friends will be there no matter how ugly people think this side of you is, or how ugly you think this side of you is. The ones that stick by you are the ones that are going to be your emotional support, and you should stick with them, because they'll always be there for you. Man, Persona 4 though, that was the first game I ever bought on Amazon. You know, after beating 3 and The Answer, I was hooked in, and I wanted to play as much Persona as I could. Thanked my friend who introduced me to it. as that website slowly started to be less and less active, the All Is Brawl website, unfortunately. But a lot of good memories there with people that I met, and I'm glad that I was able to have these kind of experiences through games like this. You know, Persona 3 and 4 really changed a lot about how I feel like I introduce myself to people, how I interact with people, and how I kind of socialize. Which is weird to say, I know, for some people, like a game taught you this sort of thing. Sounds ludicrous to some, but in the end of the day, it's really something that I don't think I would be here, sitting here, if I hadn't done that sort of thing. It's weird how Persona kind of pops up in a lot of different ways and moments of my life that really feel like they matter and that they have some true meaning to it. I'm gonna go on a little bit of a tangent, but I promise I'll bring it back to Persona. So it's about my grandma. We used to live together with my grandpa and my mom. It was the four of us in a small little house over in California. This was the same household in which my grandpa would play games as well. Like, he had a Super Nintendo in his room. He owned a Genesis Nomad where he played casino games. And every now and then my grandma would kind of just sit in the living room and watch him play the slots, or watch him play poker on there. It's funny because she would backseat him on how to do it, and he would get mad, and not in an angry way, it was just kind of a playful, like, you do it then. It was really funny to watch. Every so often she would come into my room to see what I was doing, and most of the time I was playing a game on GameCube, like Mario Sunshine or Tales of Symphonia. And I remember she would kind of stick around sometimes because she got a little invested. She'd be there for a few minutes or longer, just standing until she got tired and went back to her room. But I remember she would be invested, and that was like the first kind of like audience I ever had playing a game. And those moments were special, you know? Like, little things like that make you feel like the things that you're doing, that your interests and your hobbies mean something to someone. And it was reassuring to have somebody, you know, even in that small way, be invested in something that you are in as well. And yeah, it was like that until eventually we had to move away. They moved into a senior home, and I lived back with my mom and dad together somewhere else. That was like when I started middle school, so, you know, still a bundle of anxiety, as I would be for many years to come. Eventually, she had passed away. And you know, it's just so weird how things work out sometimes, you know, in life. Because the day that her funeral took place, I was living in two different houses, my mom's and my dad's, and my dad was the one getting my major, like, mail in packages. So before going to the funeral, I went to my dad's to pick up a package, make sure it wasn't sitting out in the open. Then I went to the funeral, and it was April 4th, 2017. That's the day it happened, because it was a sad day. There was a lot of family members there. She has many kids, so there was a lot of people to attend that funeral. And after that, as depressed as I was, because I had lost family members beforehand, none that I was too close to, but this was one that I grew up with, and I'd known for a long time, and she was super important to me. Yeah, that was a funeral that I really felt just emotional wreck afterwards. And so after the funeral had ended, I went home, and I was with, you know, who was my partner at the time. She was there with me too, and we opened the package that I got together. I knew exactly what that package was. That day of the funeral was when Persona 5 came out with the special edition. It's just a weird feeling to think that was the same day that happened, because Persona was a game I kind of wanted to show her. I started playing it after we lived apart. She was living in the senior home, I was living out here, and I felt like she would have gravitated towards that a bit more. At least the parts that weren't too like mature and, you know, with the crazy shadows happening. I think she would have had fun with some of the characters that I would have introduced her to. But thankfully, Persona 5 was there, and I was able to kind of alleviate the sadness a bit because I was immediately engrossed in that game. Was it just coincidence? Was there any higher meaning between getting this special edition of Persona 5 the same day as my grandma's funeral? I don't know. I probably will never know. But at the same time, it still meant a lot to me to be able to play this game and, you know, help drown that sorrow with something that I really enjoy and appreciate, in a series that I wish I was able to show her more of, had I had the chance to. I often think about the different themes that you see in Persona. 5 is the theme of rebellion and freedom. For 4, it's lies and truth. And for 3, it's death and the meaning of your own life. And that's the thing. I don't want people to think that Persona 3 is all doom and gloom. It's not. It does get existential, that's for sure, but there's so many good moments between that, with the characters meeting up with friends and having food or studying or running a club together. It could be all that stuff, and everyone helps to create this environment. If you played Persona 4 or 5, and if you're having passing interest of 3, you'll know that the structure more or less is the same. There are some characters that I still very much attached to, like Junpei, for example. He's probably my favorite of the best friend character, from Ryuji, from Yosuke, to Junpei. I think Junpei is probably my favorite of those 3 kind of, archetype of characters that Persona has laid out for us. And it's their interactions with each other that really makes me feel attached to them. It's them talking to each other, having fun, goofing around. It's those lighthearted moments, like as you see in the trailers, even just having food and cooking food together. It's those moments that make later parts of the story really have the impact that it does, and the reason why people latch onto this so strongly, because I still think that Persona 3 has the best story of them all. Of those, our modern Persona games, 3, 4, and 5. There are some difficult moments in the game, and some that might hit close to home, but I hope that doesn't dissuade anybody from actually playing the game, because the entire experience itself is very much worth going through and experiencing the journey. I guess there's a lot of different reasons that people might not play this game, like people will always cherish the old cast performance, for example, but at the same time, the new talent is going to bring so much life to this as well. A lot of them are actually friends in real life. Some are huge Persona fans. That's the kind of heart that I want to see put into a project like this, because that kind of life, that kind of spirit that they bring is something that, you can't just replicate that. You can't just act that out. That's the kind of heart that I want to see put into that. This game and the series itself has inspired so many things, like it somehow lands on a lot of important moments in my life. And heck, I've been writing a story for the longest time in a somewhat similar modern setting to Persona. Years ago, I commissioned a friend of mine to draw my main character. The story is still about halfway done because it took a very long hiatus, and I'd love to commission more people to see her drawn more, along with the rest of my cast of characters, but I think it's a matter of thinking to myself, who's going to care? And me eventually also telling myself, if no one else cares, just do it for yourself. And that's definitely one of the lessons that the series has taught me. A high school version of me would never be able to see himself doing this sort of thing, I think there were some moments in my life where I told myself that, no, I'm gonna make a video, I'm gonna do something. And this was before I even joined the channel. There was a moment, it was like one New Year's Day, I woke up and I was really inspired to start making something and putting it on the internet. And it didn't pan out because I realized just how much equipment I needed to make that happen. And I wasn't in a place that I could make that happen. But it still stuck with me, and it was something that I really wanted to enact on at some points. And seeing people in games like this living their lives and trying to be the best person that they can be helped to inspire that sort of feeling with Persona 3 and 4 and 5 and Golden and Portable and Royal. If you just over and over again, I play this series, a chunk of my life flushed away into worlds that I wish I was a part of in that kind of modern setting. It makes a difference, it's definitely something that helps me learn lessons, from being more empathetic with people, speaking more socially, to studying more. One of the videos I did last year, a whole year ago, on Persona 3 Portable, I mentioned that for each of these games, 3, 4, and 5, there's a moment at the end of the day that tells you, hey, maybe you should study a bit for your academics. And I'm just like, oh god, I should study in real life because there's a lot of stuff here I need to do for my own school projects. And it taught me that, instead of doing everything all at once, do it in moderation. Do a little bit every day. Or don't study by yourself, find a friend to study with, or do maybe half an hour every night. Do a little bit here and there to try and educate yourself. And doing things in moderation is definitely the way to do games like this, because there's a lot of options, but it's important to take it one day at a time. What does it say in the loading screen every time you're on Persona 5. Take your time. It doesn't have to happen all at once. Even though there is a looming time limit with a lot of these games, you know, that might stress some people out as well. Honestly, it's just something you have to take a little bit at a time every day. Whether it's something in real life, whether it's, you know, within the game itself, it all kind of encompasses you trying to be a better person, but not all at once, because, you know, your academics won't go up and shoot to the top in a day. Whether it's you're building your social stats like your charm or your courage, you know, that doesn't happen over a day. It happens in moderation, a little bit at a time. And some days you won't get any progress done, and that's fine. Sometimes you need to take a break, you need to rest, you need to make sure you know when to rest, when to do so. And boy, it's crazy how Persona kind of gamifies and recontextualize all these real life aspects into one story, into one playable piece of media that so many people have resonated with. It's crazy to think how far the series has gone. From liking Persona 3 FES on PlayStation 2, becoming a big fan, playing 4, playing 5, and it was still kind of niche until 5. I won't ever forget, I was in Disney World in Orlando. We were at the hotel when the Game Awards was happening. I was watching it on the TV because I had my Switch connected to YouTube internet. We were streaming the Game Awards. It was towards the end, and they did the big announcement right before Smash Bros. Was released of DLC characters. And it was Persona 5. It was Joker, of all characters. And no matter what anyone says, I don't care what anybody says, that is not a character that they could have expected to be there. It's not even main, it's a spin-off of Shin Megami Tensei. I don't think I saw anybody saying, oh, they're gonna add Persona to the game, like actually meaning it, because there was so many other series and characters they would have gone into. They did that before they did Dragon Quest, before they did Xenoblade characters, before they did Nintendo's own ARMS character. It was crazy to see that sort of thing. They wanted to start it off big, and they sure made an impression. And that's when I knew, at that moment, that Persona was becoming something more than just this niche side spin-off series of the main Shin Megami Tensei series. It's become something that a lot of people are resonating with. And it was so vindicating to see people go crazy for this, because I really felt like I was still in a small bubble of people that knew exactly what Persona was. And then all that happened. It's become its own thing. They've dropped the Shin Megami Tensei from the box. In every single box art beforehand, you would see Shin Megami Tensei up here, but they become so confident in this series that they don't have that anymore. It's just Persona. Persona 4 or 5 or what have you. And same with Reload. So it's crazy, man. I've never expected that a series like this would become so mainstream and popular because of how weird and different it is. But that's happened with other games in the past as well. Some games that kind of flew under the radar at first, now they're cult classics and people have strong opinions and fan bases for them, for better or worse. But I think I've rambled long enough. I don't even know how long I've been talking about Persona at this point, but thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed Persona 3 Reload if that's something you're going to play this week. Whether you're a fan of the original or this is your first time ever diving headfirst into the series, this is one of my favorite games. It introduced me to a completely different genre of games. And these characters, they hold a special place in my heart. I've never resonated with characters in a way until I played this sort of game. And I hope that this game can resonate with you in the way that it did for me way back then. It's surreal to see it in HD like this, to see it so fleshed out, to see people so excited about it. And I hope it's something that sticks with people for a long time to come. So, with all that being said, thank you so much for watching again. I hope you enjoy this, whether you're watching this before Persona 3 Reload comes out or after the fact. I still appreciate having all of you here to listen to someone talk about Persona for a long time. And yeah, with all that said, I hope you have a good one. Enjoy yourself out there. Beware of the dark hour. Till we meet again.